Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Josh and Jason Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast Show. I am your host, Josh Monday. If you don't know me, I'm a Christian rapper, devoted husband, father, and Army veteran. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-host. He's a Christian, devoted husband, and father. What's up, Jason?
What's up, man? How you doing? How's everything going? How's everybody going out there? We got a big table today. Got one, two, three.
All right, guys. So we got
dudes out there.
Okay, so we got Danunaki, my homie Romie, right? From Rising from the Ashes podcast. We got Emmanuel Kingman or Todd Armstrong on his Instagram from Goodness Over Darkness podcast. And we have Mark Palmer, or he goes by Mark Steeves from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. What's up, guys?
What up, everybody?
How's it going?
Hello.
We really appreciate you guys coming on, man. Seriously.
Thanks for having me.
This is just a group of gentlemen that are so knowledgeable on several different subjects, and we're gonna be going over Tartaria. We have some. I know Emmanuel. I guess I'll call you Emmanuel. Do you want me to call you that or Todd? I like to call you Todd.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So Todd has a good Christian side of the Tartaria, and then everybody else is gonna just come in with some, with some heat. So all right, let's
side of it.
Yes, the conspiracy side. Let's go. Okay.
The Tartaria stuff kind of led me into looking at it through a Bible lens, and that's what really threw it all into a contextual understanding that I've come to, and I have this fantastical idea of what ended the reign, quote unquote, the reign of Tartaria, if it was in fact that. But I've actually had a guest on who told me that they found it all, that they were maybe the Raphaim that just found it from an earlier time period.
Oh, you're talking about from Gary Wayne?
No.
Somebody else.
So it's mixing. Yeah,
Gary Wayne Gary
Wayne talks about the Raphaim. Yeah, but my other guest said that they found it from way earlier, that they were just like strong-armed, basically, all of it.
So I think the way I think I would connect this to the Bible for me, this is not like deep stuff with the Tartaria, but it seems like it only takes a few generations for us to forget about something. And I think what they did is they kind of hid this Tartaria stuff so that we aren't able to access the information until conspiracy theorists or people like us, we actually are activists, we all just dig and find. But if it only takes a couple generations to forget something, I think that Satan is kind of doing that with the Bible, or trying to do that with Christianity. As you're seeing, a lot of people are falling away from the faith as we go on. That's just kind of what I think. So as the generations go, Satan is trying to bring more and more people to his side, but it's up to us, guys that are Christian and guys that have shows like this to try to bring those people that fall away back into the faith. But go ahead though, Emmanuel, I think you wanted to start, bro, with your explanation of Tartaria. Go ahead, brother.
Right. So we're going to start at the end here because it'll be a good jumping off point. So if anyone's not familiar, I'm sure on this show, there are many people familiar with the term, the Christ Millennial Kingdom. It is Bible prophecy, 1,000-year reign of Christ. It's the book of Enoch, or not the book of Enoch, the prophecy of Enoch. He has the 10 weeks of prophecy. It all aligns up with who was in the Old Testament through Jesus Christ, and then it's been like 2,000 years, and allegedly nothing has occurred. That no other prophecy has been fulfilled. That there's been no prophets. That there's just 2,000 years, and it's only supposed to be about 700, between 700 years to 1,000 years is each week. So it's just very strange how it's just stopped adding up when Jesus was around. I've had on a guest who has dug into the flamenco new chronology, where there's 1,000 years possibly missing in our timeline. Now we have the Dark Ages from the year 500 to 1500, which may not have actually been a thing. They may just have added it on there because we have a lot of art, tombstones, and coins that begin with an I, the letter I, and then we'll say 579. They'll say I 680. And now it is being construed that means 1500s or 1600s, but it's actually I 504.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Possibly Jesus, because J's didn't exist at the time. Greece doesn't have a J. they have an I. Latin has an I, but there have been several languages since they have a J. So some of the coins or tombstones say J, and they also say Anno Domini, or how do you say whatever AD means, the year of our Lord. They say Anno Domini I 580, which would be in the year of our Lord 580. So we're taking these coins to now mean 1580. So there is just time added on there. So Fomenko's idea is that there was, when you see stuff that says 900, that's real. They stopped doing the I and the J at some point for whatever reason. But they, if things are I 500, now that's placed into 1500. So it actually happened earlier, but it's now being said it's happening after. So there's a lot of confusion with that. So anyway, with that in mind, that the millennial kingdom has possibly happened already, because if Jesus, he says in the Bible many times that this generation shall not pass until I come back, talking to the people who were living at that time, that you guys will not die until you see these things. So there's a lot of Bible scholars who think Jesus came back in between the years 66 and 70 AD. So these biblical weeks of prophecy from Enoch are approximately 700 to 1,000 years each. Well, 500 to 1,000 years, we'll say. So if the millennial kingdom was happening, it's 1,000 years. It may not be a full 1,000 years of peace. It may be when Jesus was born, and then it tails off at the end. The last few hundred years, maybe a rapture might occur. So this is how I believe this all ended.
I see how you're tying this up. I see
Yeah.
how you're going to tie this up in the end. Okay, that makes
Yes.
sense. For
So-
Tartaria were the ones that got raptured. Basically, is what
No,
you
no,
guys
no.
said?
Tartarians
Okay,
got,
okay.
the Tartarians were the giants, the evil giants. The
Okay,
fee fi
okay.
fo fum, we are
The
the
Russians.
Nephilim. Yeah, possibly
Don't talk about the Russians,
possibly
bro. No, just
everywhere.
kidding.
But there's a lot of mounds with
Eurasia.
giants in
Yeah,
it.
but
in
where
the
was this?
Americas.
Where's this
Hold on.
located at?
All
Where
over
is
the
this-
world.
Hold on. Where's the land located at?
All over the world.
Nobody knows.
Jason, hold on. Danunaki.
It's
No, get into that,
generally
bro.
in Eurasia is like where you find a lot of the hardcore Tartarian geographical location to be like,
Yeah.
there's evidence of them all over the world, but like I think the homestead generally for the most part would be considered ancient Eurasia.
Well, can I say something? That there's parts in the Bible that say like that when if you do
Emmanuel's showing it right now, actually, Jay.
hold
if
on,
you
I know,
want
I
to.
know, but
This is my globe that
I get it, but you see,
Nice.
but I can tell you right
Ooh,
now,
nice.
I can kind of I want to explain why there wouldn't be any history of them left at all, because God in the Bible it states, He says, "I will blot your name out of history if you do these types of idol worship. If you go to that type of that really idol worshiping thing, He will blot you out of the name." Dude, there's generations in the line of David. There's they're supposed to be 17, but they only speak about 14 because 3 of them got wiped out, blotted out. They're not mentioned in Jesus's line. Then they're part of the line of David. So there could, yes, I could believe that these people were probably the Nephilim, Rephaim, Samsumim, whatever, the Horim. The bloodline's going to move on. It's just like Christianity moved on. That's just like any religion that could be made that started up that at that time is going to move on. But there's still prophecy there's still prophecy in the Bible that hasn't been fulfilled yet. So that's why the New Testament is unfulfilled books, unfulfilled prophecy.
To give this a little more credence,
Yeah.
through the Bible, the 12 tribes of Israel, there are 13 tribes of Israel, right?
Yes,
The
13
tribe of
even,
Dan left Israel and went to the north, to the northwest, to the west of the Black Sea. And the Scythians are said to be the tribe of Issachar, and they went towards between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea.
because there was good land for cattle.
Fertile,
There.
yeah.
That's why they stayed, and because they made the Reubenites, or not the what are they called? They all stayed up there, but they got wiped out first. They were the first people to be wiped, to be
So-
conquered.
so,
when
yeah,
the
I think
Babylonians was up.
what he's going to do is he's going to just try to connect. Are you guys going to try to connect some of the tribes, like some of the lost tribes, to the Tartarians?
There's no
Yeah,
lost tribes.
Oh, they definitely
to
are.
the land of
Hold on.
Tartaria. So that the land that people talk about as Tartaria in the European
Bushan, then. That's gotta
Eurasia
be
continent
That's got to be
is,
kind of close
is
to
that
Bushan.
area between the Black Sea and the Caspian
Mhm.
Sea, which includes like Mongols and Khans from
Yeah.
China and Russia. It includes these other different tribes from Israel that all went to the north because the Persians were coming in and ransacking Jerusalem and going to war with them and forcing them up into the north. So that's all stuff that I have found too. So that is where the idea of Tartaria comes from, and these tribes going up into the north.
And then was Genghis Khan Christian, bro? I just heard
Yeah.
that.
He was a
I
giant.
just heard
redhead.
that.
Yeah,
I heard he was a
Christian.
redhead,
Yeah. Look, check out my
Christian.
episode 52. Yeah, but
52. Okay, maybe that's where I heard it from, because I've
or
been listening to the show, you guys'
episode
shows,
50,
man.
Tartarian Christians, yeah, but they ate. So when they went around conquering, Genghis Khan, conquer Khan, which means King of Kings, actually, and he fulfills the first 4 seals of the 7 seals breaking, which is very strange in itself. But he would go around killing his brothers, these other Tartarians, and then he would eat them. They wouldn't allow their blood to hit the ground, which is another biblical thing. It's very weird. And that was only in the 1200s. And there were like 30 cities of 32 million people back then, like massive cities that we're not told existed.
Wow.
Damn.
Interesting. All right. Danunaki.
So you want me to get to the rapture part?
Yeah, get to
the
man.
rapture, bro.
Okay.
That was-
Wrap up
All
the rapture.
Okay, so in the late 1700s, the rapture occurred, and which may not be like actually 900 or 700. I don't know what actual year it is at the moment. I will state that. So when the rapture occurred, according to our timeline, is probably late 1700s. You have Emanuel Swedenborg. I'm just going to give the bullet points on it. Anyone in the audience can look all this up. Emanuel Swedenborg, 1772, he died, and he said that the second coming is now. He's a guy who was a scientist for a very well-respected scientist for 50 years. And then on Easter morning, somewhere in 1744, 1747, something like that, Jesus Christ appears to him at the foot of his bed, and he becomes a prophet of Jesus's. The new Christ church is in his honor. And he said the second coming is happening now. He predicted his own death. He did many different things to prove how psychic he just became when Jesus visited him. And his name was Emmanuel, which is very biblical, in that Emmanuel would be the one coming at the end to declare Christ's second coming. So
Are you declaring that right now?
no, not me. No, the other guy.
So this is all. This is all.
Joke. It's a joke.
No, that's all. I was laughing too.
Yeah. I'm declaring the final judgment's coming. That's
Listen,
what I'll
You
declare.
declare.
This is all, guys. If it falling into this timeline, this is all speculative. Okay, guys, this is not. We're not.
Well, this
saying
is all
rapture
true
occurred.
about
Yeah.
Emanuel
So-
Swedenborg.
Yeah.
That's all true
According
stuff
to
about him.
Yeah,
What-
it's
yeah.
true about it. I'm just saying about you saying the rapture occurred already.
Right,
So
yeah.
We're just speculating, guys. Don't think
course.
that it actually happened. We're just speculating. But go ahead.
We're
Doug.
speculating based
Go.
off of evidential stuff
Yeah,
that we have.
that I'm
Yeah,
connecting.
which is
yeah.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
then 73, the Jesuits are expelled, which is very important. The Jesuits are
1773,
expelled
yes, sir.
the year after he died and predicted the day of his own death. So then in 76, we have the Bavarian Illuminati and the United States both start at the same time.
Yep.
We also have constitutions starting to be implemented all over the world. And I did say before in the late 1700s that they're all Five Eyes. That's not true. It was across the entire 1800s. They all happened, but it started in the late 1700s, the United States being the first one of these. So then we have 1812, France is warring with Russia.
What are the Five Eyes? What does that mean?
So the Five Eyes, what is Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, but all across the world, everybody was starting to, that has constitutions today, started getting them after
Okay.
the United States got their
Oh,
76.
I see.
Gotcha.
Cool, cool,
Gotcha.
cool.
Yeah. So when I said the Five Eyes, I just meant those. Yeah, I forget that not everybody out there listening may know who they are. So yeah, so we had the war in 1812, but before that, the Moors in the 1770s were wiped out by different European factions, which then led to the United States having the Constitution. Then in 1812, you have the French and the Indian War happening in America, and you have the French also warring with Russia, which would make it a world war, but they don't tell us that. 1816, we have the year without a summer, which lasts for several summers. So the sun was blackened out, just as the Bible says it would be blackened out. And I mean, there was a literal year without a summer. There's also tales in, well, this goes from earlier, but tales from India that there was a war in the heavens, that they actually saw warring in the heavens, which a lot of people say is UFOs, but it's probably just the original second coming, which was right around 70 AD or so. But anyway, getting back to this, Carrington event happens in 1859. The World's Fair start happening in 1850.
Orphan trains.
The orphan trains. We have no tombstones can be found before the year 1850. You have the gold rush happening in California, 1849. So famous, the 49ers are named in their honor, but there's no tombstones from anybody dying. And they probably just drained the water that was there. And that waterway was actually called the Red Sea. If you can find maps in the 1700s of California being an island, and the Red Sea separated it, whereas now Nevada and Utah, so maybe America was Israel at some point, or to some degree was an actual biblical thing. Yeah, so the Carrington event 1859 happens. 1860, the seasonal flu was introduced into humanity. Before that, it was not a seasonal thing. 1865 and 67, we have anxiety and depression both introduced to humanity, which are radiation frequencies hitting the earth and hitting humanity and just causing severe damage to all of us, which all these new technologies do. So anyway, that all happened, I believe, because it was the rapture, and the mud floods all occurred. So the orphan trains, the infantoriums, these are all things that are introduced because the population was so low, which is actually, there's a mathematical thing. You can multiply, take your two parents, multiply them by 2 each time. And if you go back 1,000 years, each of us would have over 2 billion living relatives at that one moment. So there was only 300 million people on Earth at that time. So there's something there that is not adding up. Literally, mathematically, it doesn't add up. And so the last thing that I wanted to say was that the mud floods, we have this event where the dinosaurs were killed off, right? That a comet hit the Earth. Well, maybe it wasn't actually way back when. Maybe it was not too long ago, and maybe the comet hitting the Earth made the volcano explode, which then would be a huge fireball, would flash freeze everything, as well, would be so hot, would suck up a ton of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which would then, everything that needed that would die instantly. And then as soon as it got cold again, we would have a quote unquote ice age, which we do know that according to mainstream history, we went to a mini ice age in the 1300s. And then what you would have left is just the smoke in the air and the things that could survive with the amount of oxygen that is left. So it's very strange, but it could have happened just like that. So that's the end of Tartaria.
I think it's a really good, it's a super solid
all right,
breakdown.
Guys, show's over.
Good.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Hey,
that's why I was like, let him do it, because he has so many good facts and good information, and it paints a really good picture
of the day.
Of the whole
good job, dude. That was cool.
Oh,
I like that, man. Quick question: the mud floods, is that like a worldwide flood, or what was the mud floods? What is that?
Oh, well, so to me, if it was this scenario, which biblically the Bible says that the first world will be destroyed by water, the second one by fire. So
Yeah.
obviously, mud flooding would be soil liquefaction, could be heating, it could be massive amounts of water. There's many different ways soil liquefaction can happen. Earthquakes can do it.
Was it
So
all through the world, or was it just in
yes.
Tartaria?
Yeah, no,
It's
so
all through the
yeah,
world.
it's all over the world, and the evidence we
Okay.
have is through photographs of buildings that are now
Yeah.
slanted, and they start to dig them up. We have the
I've been studying that part of it, so yeah,
Easter
get it.
Island.
So, okay, can I say something? Can I ask a question? So what you're saying is that those world fairs were actually, or maybe already there,
Yes.
and they destroyed them after they had the had a fair in there, and they just destroyed all those. Those are very intricate buildings to have up. Those aren't like some buildings that you'd have to be like superhuman to make those, and supernatural to make those buildings up and that quickly, and then just to have them tear down that fast. That I was watching some stuff on that. And I was like, Nicholas Tesla was involved in some of these things, and watched this stuff. Was like, wow, this is very
Yeah, there were a lot of technological
advances, like super advanced. Like
it's kind of like Egypt, how the people would come and just write their cartouches on statues that were already there. They look at the cartouches and the carvings on the statues, and they're like, scratchy. The lines aren't perfectly straight like the rest of the statue. The lines on it and everything is all perfect and symmetrical, and the lines that are all carved in are kind of like somebody came later and tagged it up. And so with the Tartaria aspect, you get kind of the same thing as you have these buildings here. And with the world fairs, as they come in and disguise it, make it look like they built these buildings, then they set fire to the ones that they built, leave the ones that were already there, and then claim it as theirs.
That's what
and we have
the
all
story
those
behind Titanic is the same too, right? Like it was like an old Tartarian boat. Then that's like part of the reason why it was crashed, even though there's a whole other banking side of that. But that's a fun one too.
Well, when I talked to Andreas Exeris about that, he said that actually everything was human size, was our size. So he didn't believe that it was Tartarian because none of the doorways were more than just average. None of the beds.
There's a bunch of
that's interesting.
Atlantis.
And like the red brick buildings, right?
Well, yeah, with their electromagnetic conductors, right? The red bricks.
There's a bunch of Atlantis symbolism in the Titanic, though. The Titan, the Titanic, the Atlantic, the Atlantis,
and it's
the
funny
Olympus, the Olympians.
Yeah, they would kill the Olympic and say it was the Titans that died. Yeah.
That's
Mark.
That's funny.
Mark, you want to jump in, bro? I know that you're over there. You're just listening.
He's grooving, man.
Mark,
you guys forgot about me.
Mark, let me ask you. I didn't forget about you. I've been looking at you to make sure that you're, just make sure that you're chilling and listening. But what did you want to say, bro? I know that I heard on a few of your shows already. I actually listened to a few coming into this, so I can get some info on what you're thinking. So, are you a little bit of a skeptic on this, or do you believe? Do you believe it? I mean, how do you feel about it, brother?
Wow, you nailed it. I'm definitely skeptical, but not for the wrong reasons. I definitely just want to exercise as much discernment as possible because I think it's important. Where I can agree with what Todd just said is the fact that there is evidence for cataclysms here across the world. It's been recorded throughout various different cultures, mythologies, and the stories that they tell. And I think the point about water and fire, we have cataclysms caused by flood. We have cataclysms caused by possibly, asteroid impact. That could possibly be fire, or volcanic eruption, right? That could also possibly be fire. So I think there are clear ways to find evidence for this stuff. And there is geological evidence of the flood. There is the, liquefaction. I'm sure you guys saw the TikTok video that's circling around. It's like a little model house inside of like a little like aquarium, and they shake it. Yep. And they shake it, and everything sinks. And the one like kind of hollow golf ball floats to the top. So when I saw that video, it kind of reminded me of like all the stones that are around where I live in New England. Like there's all these stones. And when Todd was on my show, he brought up all these really strange shaped stones, and the Native Americans, the more I study them, the more you find stories of like beings who were destroyed and then turned into stone, like the giants, right? We have these Nephilim that were here in North America. So to me, what I mostly agree with is the fact that we had an ancient civilization here on the planet that was far more advanced than what we have today. And since the collapse of that civilization, certain groups have collected as much as they can of what was left and repurposed it to take as much control as they can. And they've even gone so far as to possibly rewrite history, like Emmanuel or Todd was pointing out so eloquently. They wanted to separate us from Christ. So they added 1,000 years, so that they can have more control and we would have less understanding of who Christ was as, an incarnation of the Creator himself, right? So, all of that I agree with. There are a lot of things, and this isn't on anybody who's in this conversation, but there are a lot of things within the whole scope of what people say about Tartaria that I think, need to be met with more skepticism than it is met with. That's fine. We're not going to nitpick every little thing. But what I will say is here where I live, what I can actually go out and see with my own eyes is the amazing amount of stone and the way it's stacked, right? You have all these stone walls. And what comes to my mind is like, well, if the earth quakes and all of these things happen, what if these, walls turn into rubble and the rubble stays in a line, like as if it was a wall, right? So you have all these stone piles all over the place. Who knows? That could be like rubble, literally rubble from an ancient structure that was destroyed. But then on the other side of it is you see these ley lines, right? The ley lines kind of show you where the energy is moving through the earth. And to me, what it seems like is when a culture comes in and takes over another culture, they don't destroy everything. They just destroy everything that wasn't on the ley line. So they take everything that's on the ley line and repurpose it. So what you have is all these old buildings getting repurposed because the way they were built possibly harkens back to a time when the energy of the earth was different and they were able to levitate these huge masses of stone across these ley lines in order to position them in all these strange ways in these megalithic structures and the even some of the Victorian structures. But where it becomes really, really fascinating with that whole thing is when it comes to the fact that you have all of these like magnetic kind of shaped structures as well, like the arcs, right? I think Romie actually sent me a picture of one of these today or posted something about magnets. It. Yeah, they look like magnets in the ground, and just put on the ground, that U shape, that upside down U shape arc.
Do you guys know what that's in honor of? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Please tell us.
It's the original Roman god Janus or Janus. It's very strange, the things about this guy. I suggest everybody look up Janus, the god Janus. It's very strange. Okay, yep. January is named after him. That's why it's the first month. He was the first god. Well, he might be the God of the Old Testament. Honestly, I think he is the God of the Old Testament.
Well, I want to bring something from the biblical perspective. If you would think about it, people were before the flood and all that, people lived 800 years. This is what it states in the Bible. So 900 years old. So even if you live 500 years old, you're gonna be a pretty smart guy. And people that were living that long, they're like, man, they're like you said. Like people, there was an advanced civilization here before. Yes, because they were living here 800 years. Like, right. Look at it this way: if we were had a ice age, right? The whole earth would be covered in ice. The sun couldn't get in that good, so it'd be like a prism, right? So you're refracting the light off. So you're not really, you're living longer. Trees there's more oxygen now. People are having living way longer, and you're learning probably, and you're more spiritual. Like you said, ley lines.
Think
like
about
that,
living
more spiritual. They could talk. They used to talk to God. They used to, you know what I mean? So
well,
you would know.
exactly.
So you're but when you get into mischief, hold on. When you get into mischief, like this angel, like the fallen angels were getting into, you mix a very smart man with mischief and an angel that's getting into mischief. You're talking to you. Who knows what you can make? Who knows what's out there? Who knows what's going on right now? Today I go outside and it's not even windy outside, but there's so many. I'm talking like so many chemtrails going through through Rialto, and it's disgusting to me. Well, I go outside, I wake up, it's everywhere. It's everywhere now. It's like, oh wow, they're not even kidding anymore.
Before we get too far away from
hold on, Jason. Hold on, Jason. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Before you get too far away from that point, Jason, I love what you just brought up because it reminded me of kind of where I was going with, people who are into the flat earth. They know about the dome of ice, right? That fell, and the waters of the sky mixed with the waters from the deep, right? So we've all heard that. It's been recorded in many different cultures, not just the Bible. But what's so interesting about putting yourself in the shoes, like you said, of these people who potentially lived for 900 years. Well, what was the world like living under that dome? I don't think they would have the same way to track time that we do if they were living under a dome. Like you said, the light would be refracting. They probably weren't living with a night and day cycle the same way we are. And that even wraps into the whole time, manipulation thing, because it's very easy to maybe make the suspicion or it could
appear like two suns.
Well, and it's very obvious to me that time back then was not the way it is now, and the years that they were calling years are not what we would call a year. So that being said, and then to the point about the ice, water and ice are very conductive of electricity. So this is going to make for a much, much more energetic atmosphere, which is why you have megafauna, megaflora, you have giants, you have all
more
of these
humidity
huge,
as well.
Right. Yeah. So, and you also have more energy pumping through these ley lines and balancing and refracting back off of the ice, so you can move all these huge stones. That's why we need machines and metals to do it all now, because all of that stuff has gone into the earth.
Would this be considered the golden age period that we're talking about? Would the golden age with the ice wall on it? Because that's kind of the opposite of how I've always thought about and envisioned the golden age, which is like, there's a catastrophic event that would end the golden age, and to add the axis to the earth that wasn't sitting straight up and down, then the atmosphere getting smaller. But what we're talking about here is an interesting,
So I have a greenhouse.
Super interesting.
Dude, I'm blown away right now. I'm like, I'm getting pumped up right now because I want to go about how there's a verse in the Bible that I'm trying to can't remember where it's at, but it says, because God is a mathematical God. So if you look at it this way, and the day of the life of God is 1,000 years, and is like a day is like a day to us, or to him is 1,000 years. So if you
a day to him is 1,000 years to us,
7,000 years, because look at it took them It took them 1 day to create, the first day to create, second. So 7 took them 7 days, right? So you got to think about it. We're still on the 6th day, because if you go through Genesis, it's encrypted in there, and you read it, it'll show you man was created. And then there's a gap theory. There's this gap theory.
Some people have a gap theory. Yeah.
So when Satan
that's in the very beginning, bro, between day 1 and day 2, the gap theory.
If you get into the Bible and you really read it, you go by a 7,000 year history.
So it's Friday.
It makes sense.
It's Friday.
Right. So it'd be the 5th day. So there's actually time that's been added in to make us look like we're in the
6th day. Because if you talk about the mark of the beast in Revelation, it talks about the 6th day God made beast and stuff like that.
All of this is leading up to, and we have so much evidence of this in the founding of the United States of America. You have all of these people in positions of power who are trying to bring on the second coming of Christ. And what they want to do is push things to the point of apocalypse. Maybe that's what's happening now with the whole jab. One of my patrons called it the Jabberwocky. I love that. They have that now, and that might be the mark of the beast. Maybe they're trying to beckon Christ.
Here's another thing, guys.
I think
real quick,
it's setting it up for.
Hold on, real quick.
All right.
So here's another thing. So also, like as far as the 19th, when Israel became a nation again, that was the that's the Rothschilds that actually purchased 140,000 acres of land and actually put them there. So when you start studying like who the true Israelites are, which we had an episode on this, and also Danunaki, I'm sure you know what's up with this too. Some people say that the 10 tribes of Israel went to Tartaria. Isn't that what some people are saying, or am I confused on that?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Yeah, they went to the northeast, and that's like the very northeast. And on maps, it actually says that in I-290, Paul came here and preached Christianity.
So we got Mark talking about how they're trying to actually make the second the second coming actually happen. So some of the stuff is man-made where they do want it to occur, or they want us to think it's occurring, or they want to do a fake rapture, or they want to do like a fake second coming, or
they're trying to set the scene because they understand that the judgment is coming, and they want to set the scene so they'll be on the good end of Christ's or God's judgment, right? So this is kind of where they invert things and make, like this is alchemy, this is right here, boom, alchemy, and alchemy used to be considered a way to connect with God. A lot of the greatest inventions of our modern world were created by people who were pursuing God's inspiration, and that's how they discovered certain ways to blend chemicals. And then now we have all these alloys and all these things we work with. We have like filaments that illuminate our houses,
graphene oxide.
All of that is part and parcel to divine inspiration and God. And to bring it back to the Tartaria stuff, Gog and Magog, right?
Yeah.
You guys familiar with these terms?
Yes, yes, sir. That's in the Bible.
These were locations in Tartaria, but they were also
in Russia.
Names that George Bush and his father, George Bush Sr.
That's their Skull and Bones name, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So and this book
and that's
that I have
2001.
in my hands.
Yeah.
This book that I have in my hands is called The Vinland Map and the Tartar Relation, and it's published by Yale University. So it's very curious that the people who are going to Yale have this kind of symbolism and are aware of the Tartaria stuff. When Andreas Zertis was on my show, he talked about the Tartaria Codex, which curiously enough, he put his hands on. So I don't know how trustworthy that makes him. I love Andreas. Shout out to him. I'm just saying the dude's a little shady. He's a great dude, but he's got that ability. He walks in those circles because he's got that mind. He's got the Ivy League appeal. But either way,
well, he's super spiritually connected. I'll tell you that when I connected with him, he was very different. He very focused, and his energy is very different than anyone else I've ever talked to.
Like I said, I love the guy. He's really awesome. I'm proud to call him a friend, but like I said, not anybody can just go into Yale and look at this stuff. Andreas, like I said, has that intelligence. He has that sort of ability to walk in those circles. I think he does it in a good way, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about Tartaria here.
Yeah.
And the Tartaria Codex is in Yale, which is like, of course they've come out and they've said, oh, this is just, an antiquated document that doesn't have any historical relevance. But of course they're going to say that. They don't want any of their best and brightest to get lost down that road, even though, it's not a dead end. They want to give you the appearance that it is. So I think the resurgence of Tartaria information coincides with quite possibly this reemerging of Christ. I mean, quite literally, it's
coming at the right time.
In my worldview,
final judgment.
The prophet, the creator, we're all connected. We all have the ability to be a source of divine inspiration. So I think that is what was really prophesized, was not that Christ would incarnate as one man, but Christ would incarnate as every man, and we would all live our lives to those ideals that were set forth through that life that he lived. And unfortunately, that comes with a lot of bad side effects, like the whole history of America, right? The indigenous people were considered heathens. They were not considered Christians, right? So this is the kind of thing that has created and added fuel to the fire of now, and it's not all the same type of Christian for the most part. Like you guys have pointed out, it's Jesuits, it's Catholics, it's this sort of co-opting parasitic. It's a parasitic entity that's taken the word and the sacred teachings and used them to, materialistic and evil ends, really evil ends. So we need to remember that, like, the people who were living here in North America were quite possibly the tribes of Israel, and just as connected in their own
Native
way.
Americans, right?
Yeah, they were just as connected in their own way to the Creator without the Bible.
They're actually there's actually some land that the Native Americans actually get to claim out in Israel. So there's that. Also,
wow,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
because they knew they did a sacred, because their
you tell them about
festivals are the same festivals, the same exact months. The Cherokee have them, the Cheyenne have them.
No,
and
they worship a Yahweh too.
Hold on really quick.
Yoda.
So they were actually, Danunaki, I think you're interested, so I heard you say that. So what happened is they were actually missing something in Israel. The Jews were missing a part of their ceremony, and over here in North America, the Indians were doing that part of the ceremony. So
no, they were doing the whole ceremony with the whole
ceremony.
Part.
I'm sorry, with that part. So then the Jewish people were like interested, like, well, how would they know the rest of that ceremony that we were missing? So then they ended up coming to find out. They did like a DNA test, and some of these Indians, this tribe, were actually went back to I guess to Abraham, I believe.
That's why the giants came over here.
They come.
That's why the giants came over to follow them. They were devouring them. That's why when they say that star people came down and mated with people and had giants, that the stories in every single history of any type of geological places, like you go to Mayans, Incans, all of them have the same story.
Star people, the fallen angels.
Yes.
The Native Americans come from
devouring
Europe also.
people. That's why God was hey, this isn't good. And that's why I feel like that the Indians were wiped out, the Native Americans, is because they knew about this stuff. And what are you going to do? What do you do when you go conquer a place? Get rid of all their history, get rid of everything that they know, because the stuff that they know was like, oh man, they live off the land. There's no stealing, there's no murdering, there's no child molesting, there's nothing. You don't have to worry about none of that.
And they had one spiritual practice throughout everywhere. They were all in unison.
Yep, and they had a creator, and they knew that they were going to die and go meet their creator and meet their ancestors in the sky that were before them.
All of this has been forgotten, and look at what day we're coming up upon next week, right? Thanksgiving. The literal, Americans, it's that narrative that they took, they took it and they placed it in the mind of every child in school for the past 80 to maybe as far back as the World's Fair, right?
Yeah, we came over and we're nice to each other, and we were like, "Oh yeah, here's some corn, here's some fish. We taught you how to plant."
But that's because they don't want us to
wipe them out.
But they don't want us to interfere with that plan to bring that back. And what I said about like, oh, Christ possibly coming and being all of us instead of just one man, I don't think that's what they're expecting. I think that's what's inevitably going to happen. And what it is like the friction between that fight between, God or Christ and Satan, if you will, that, constant, like the yin yang here, as the Taoists put it, that constant battle and balancing, it only spirals upwards, towards progress, evolution, I think. And what you find is it happens in cycles. So
that's
when
alchemy.
You go back and you look at the ancient, they were at the peak, then we go to this really low point when they're rewriting history, dark ages. We don't even know if some of those years happened, right? But now we're on this upswing. And I think what's happening on the real and for what the hopeful side of all this Tartaria stuff and what it really brings to mind is like, people are looking for a real answer, because for the longest time, the Vatican, the snakes of Venice have corrupted, in that Garden of Eden kind of way. They've corrupted the apple of knowledge and wisdom. And for the first time, I think, in human history, that's been recorded, we're going to have a time to share all of this on a podcast like this through books that are massively distributed, not like in that conquistador way, not in the missionary way where you force someone to believe in God, But when, we all see that it's one truth that we're all seeing from different angles, and that unites us,
Not an inquisition. We're not bringing no inquisition in.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
how about
It's
we
like
bring
this
this back
podcast
to
here, because not all of us believe in the same things, and we're all
Exactly.
different, but we're all agreeing on certain aspects of this whole situation. So,
right.
For sure, man.
And
For
that
sure.
can bring what you're just saying right here. We can bring it back to, how did the Native Americans have Greek architecture all over the United
Yeah.
States? So how does that come into play unless they are the tribes of Israel, and the tribes of Israel actually seeded mostly everything, and maybe they were all different races because they were all the children of God, right? So God made all the different races. So maybe if there's 12 of them, maybe there's like 2 of each race or something to that effect, and they just went about and started teaching and giving all this information to everyone, going around, and maybe they were the quote unquote culture because they had all the information.
Do you guys mind if I read a quote from or a excerpt from a sweet book that I think everybody might have a little bit something to say about? This book that I found that has some Tartarian interesting subjects.
As long as you give us
Go
the
ahead,
name of the
brother.
book and who wrote the book.
Yeah, so they
All
get
right.
the props.
The title is long, so here we go. American Antiquities and Discoveries in the West, being an exhibition of the evidence that an ancient population of partially civilized nations, differing entirely from those of the present Indians, peopled America many centuries before its discovery by Columbus, and inquiries into their origin with a copious description of many of their stupendous works now in ruins, with conjectures concerning what may have become of them, compiled from the travels, authentic sources, and researches of the antiquarian societies by Hosea Priest.
That's
the
the
name
title
of the book.
That's
the name of the book.
I was
That's the
like,
name of the book.
Awesome.
Wow. He died in
Go ahead.
1851, and this book came out on 1833. All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it hits a lot of notes, and I'm just gonna read this one excerpt from it, and then let's go off from there. Okay. It is true, the family of Shem, of whom were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, by the particular providence of God, retained the traditional history of the creation and of man, until the time Moses embodied it in a book 857 years after the flood. But the rest of the nations were left in this respect to mere recollections, which as soon as they divided and subdivided became contradictory and monstrous. But the authors of the great works found in the West seem to have retained the first ideas received from their fathers at the era of the building of Babel, equally, if not superior, to the many nations of Europe as they were in the year 800 after Christ. This is consented to on all hands and even contended by the historian Humboldt, in order to show the reader the propriety of believing that a colony very soon after the confusion of a language of mankind found their way to what is now called America. We give the tradition of the Azteca nation, the one who inhabited Aztlan, the country of the western states, but were at the era of the conquest of South America found inhabiting the Vale of Mexico, because they have, as we have shown, been driven away by the eruptions of the Tartarian Indians.
Boom.
Tartarian Indians?
Yeah.
And if you look back,
I've
like,
never
all
heard
right,
that.
so in this age of discovery, right, there's a bunch of stories of Spanish travelers coming along and finding giants, right? But even like up in the Northeast, in like what is now New Brunswick, Canada, you have depictions of the Micmac indigenous tribes there, and they're dressed like similar to what you see quote unquote Tartarians dressed like, and they're very tall, paler skin than we're led to believe. And you got to also remember that there was quite possibly an African influence here as well, where you know, great civilizations in Africa, they were able to go across the Atlantic, whether through, you know, a series of land bridges that were larger than what is now here, you know, post flood, or just straight sailing, right? Because we have stories even from 800 AD where Abu Bakr leaves Africa and sails across the Atlantic and was never seen again. But he left with like 4,000, men and all these ships, and so they were able to quite possibly seed South America, Mexico, North America. So there wasn't just like one group of people; it was quite literally a melting pot.
You know what's crazy?
There's Chinese writing somewhere
in
I think
Arizona,
the Grand Canyon, or
well, California too. Joshua trees only grow in Israel and
think about it. What's the biggest dam in the whole world? Isn't it the Hoover Dam, right? That's the biggest dam in the whole world. So what are they holding back with all of that water that they're damming up with that dam? Well, they're hiding all of that stuff in the Grand Canyon, like Emmanuel pointed out.
There's
Chinese.
Yeah, there's an old. I used to read these treasure books because like there's this old Forrest Fenn treasure like that was looked for and stuff like that. But he had a story that there was down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. There's a little there was water, and he got to the bottom and he found a treasure that was hidden inside of the walls of the Grand Canyon at the bottom. And he said it was like a certain part of the day the sun hit it, and he saw it, and he went inside there, and it was all Asian and
Egyptian.
Like Egyptian, yes, it was all Egyptian. And when he went to go back, he couldn't find it again. So I could believe, like you said, the Hoover Dam.
They got pyramids in the Grand Canyon.
Yes,
the Grand Canyon may have been the Tower of Babel, and God cut it out. It was struck down, right? And now we have the Grand Canyon.
Who knows, man? That's.
Dude, there's so much stuff.
Isn't there dendritic? Isn't there dendritic scarring around the Grand Canyon? Ari Aslin tries to point out that might be one of the places where that's pretty interesting too.
There's also a pyramid in Georgia.
Right.
Yeah. There's Georgia's a hotbed. I live in Georgia. I went to the Georgia
Guidestones.
I went there in the summer.
That's kind of like the Rosetta Stone type of thing. You could go through and.
Dude, there's so many Freemasons in Georgia and South Carolina. Like every town you go through, there's these different
Jesuits, also
signs.
Jesuit schools.
Okay, I didn't even look for that. So I'll start looking for that. But
where's Georgetown located?
That's Washington D.C.
Washington. Okay. Is it?
So,
Oh, that's even worse.
So there's these like big signs, and on the signs you have the symbols of all the different secret societies that are in that town. And I mean, it's everywhere. It's I like the way that they build here. It's like they're the most master builders that there are, that we have.
There's Scott Walter, who did the TV series America Unearthed, and what he found when he went to go find the Mayans is that they recovered that the source of that blue dye that they were using was from Georgia.
Oh yeah. And the Freemasons, they sent their best guy down here, Randall Carlson. They sent him to live here to start studying all this. So, it's interesting. He's a quote unquote conspiracy theorist type of guy, but he's probably just, he's a 32nd at least, if not 33rd degree Mason. So anyone who takes that pledge, you cannot.
If you're on Joe, you got to go.
Yeah, anyone that takes that pledge, you can't trust. So then Graham Hancock, all his stuff, you can't trust because he's linked with Randall Carlson. And they're trying to push it so far ancient. Oh, look how old all this stuff is. Well, was Göbekli Tepe, was that covered up in the mud flood instead of being purposely covered up 13,000 years ago? Was it the mud flood a few hundred years ago that just seems like it was purposely covered up because it was mud just leaked in there?
Well, that's why a lot of people think the mud flood was specifically derogatory or aimed at this ancient empire civilization, because it was like they were too powerful and they had the technology that needed to get stolen and it needed to get hijacked, but they had to do it in such a way that they could actually win because, in theory, that war was going on for a very long time and it was very hard to win. And if you're going against somebody, and we haven't even talked about the fact that Tartaria has a shit ton of crazy ether energy and all of this knowledge and extensive information about the electromagnetic grids that are connected to some of the hotspots on the earth, so there's the battle of technology, and that's what a lot of the mud flood stuff is that the mud flood needed to happen in order to get rid of these people so they could thus take over and hijack their empire.
Here's something I thought about earlier with Tartarians and how you can get the word Aryan out of it, and then Ares, and then Ares was the god of Mars, and that's your Martians. And then what do the aliens do, right? What's the idea in conspiracy theory? They're giving man technology in order to harvest basically souls or DNA or whatever, right? So when you think of it like that, that's what the devil does, is he gives technology to people and then expects something in return.
Yeah, like a pact. Yeah, or gives you fame, or gives you whatever, whatever you're trying to chase. Basically,
have any of you guys gone to any places in your local areas that have different, maybe not local, but maybe you traveled a little bit to go look at the architecture of these different places? So I went to St. Augustine, and I'm also a truck driver. So every day I'm going a couple hours away. And what I've really found was it's hidden in the hood of everywhere. That is, they target those areas. They make those low poverty areas. And go look at your local hoods and you'll see that there is a lot of the architecture, especially in rural hoods, compared to, maybe New York City. You'll never find what's under there, but I see a lot of it. And you can see in my background, I went to St. Augustine, and they have these bell towers, right? And all these bells are gone. So they had like a massive melting of bells in the 30s and 40s, which is very odd. Bells, why would they do that? And we were talking about the shape of the earth earlier and the ice dome. What if the earth is actually the shape of a bell? You hear the term cosmic egg sometimes. What if it's actually more like a bell, like the Nazi bell, the Die Glocke, the UFO that they had? And maybe that's why all the bells were empty. Maybe that's some kind of signifier. And then you have the Liberty Bell gets cracked, right? And it got cracked. The Liberty Bell, the firmament got cracked, right? So it's all linked up, and you just have to understand how to look at everything. Why would they remove the bells? And the Die Glocke would be the shape of a Jetsons type of little car, the little flying vehicle.
I don't know.
Interesting. That is some fucking shit, man.
Well, you guys you're talking about the spires. I wish I could zoom in on this, but yeah, the different electrical, the way that the electricity would have worked, it would have been like some kind of, could have just moved through the air much easier.
So a lot of this Tartarian architecture also has like gold plated or copper, or some type of conductive material on the top spires. And so why would they put a conductive metal on top of a spire unless you're trying to conduct electricity into it, in some form of fashion? So you have to ask that question also, because otherwise it makes no sense to put those metals on the top,
right?
Unless you want to get electrocuted, that's like Benjamin Franklin with the kite, right?
Unless you want to get lightning.
Well, Nikola Tesla,
kite, get it electrocuted. I don't believe that shit, but still, that's what they want you to believe.
But Nikola Tesla, he says you could just pull energy from the air like that, and maybe they had some...
Well, and you see the copper roof on this one. You can tell the copper roof is super old. The rest of the building has been retouched, and even if the spires have been retouched, this is it's trying to be in memory of gold, like you're saying. And there's also Mercury would. So when we take the so we have to have the radical idea real quick that churches and mosques don't actually exist for religion, that religion was there to cover up all of this. That the Islamic symbols and the cross, they're all just different energetic devices that do different things, and Mercury would spin inside of these little domes, so it would be like a spire with a ball in the center, and Mercury would spin in there, and that's a conductor of electricity, so that it would happen in a different way.
And they have found pools of mercury underneath the pyramids in Egypt, and they have found it also in in Mexico under pyramids too. So
yeah, they diverted the water though out of Egypt. I think if you introduced water back into that part of the pyramids, I think you would get yourself a nice little reactor. You get a little.
Maybe the Hoover Dam's holding that up.
Hey, what about what about the star fortresses? What are those, guys? What are the star fortresses that they're talking about?
That's a good one. I was actually listening to, I don't know if you guys follow the observation deck on YouTube. Amazing. That guy's awesome. You can get a lot of good.
I got one.
Right there you go. There you go.
Yeah. Look right here. So I went there to this one and it was awesome. So, I mean, it seemed like a battlefield though. It didn't seem like anything other than a battlefield. I mean, it was set up completely for that. So maybe stuff was added on later, but it was and so on this one here, I'm in the way. Actually, let me go on that.
What's interesting about the star fort is why do you need to build a star fort in a geometrical shape if you're just trying to defend away from other people? That's what doesn't make sense to me. I can get like maybe you wanted to have forts protect your boundaries and whatnot, but why the geometrical patterns?
Well, yeah, I don't think all of them. I think this one might have been for war, but not all of them. Like this has a drawbridge right here. Like this was like you wouldn't have a drawbridge unless you're protecting whoever's in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. So well, the bastion fort is like the military term for what you're looking at right there, and I guess the military strategic advantage to having a fort like that is when, you know, in those times when they were relying on muskets, you know, you didn't have as many shots as you do now with the amount of, you know, bullets you can fire with an automatic weapon. They were shooting once and then they had melee weapons when they ran out of bullets. So, you know, they were still worried about people invading the fort and like climbing the walls or getting near the entrances. So the bastion fort in military theory is, you know, designed so that you can have a flank on anybody who comes near those walls because you're extended in those points and you can shoot fire, you know, from a much larger angle than you could from just a right angle square. So to me, you know, I don't point at every fort like you said, Todd, you know, when you went there, it seemed, you know, like there was no other technology other than, you know, defensive technology. I think that's like really, that's the discernment that I'm looking for. And I agree with that completely. But there are cases for like some European ones where you see the water going around them and you're like, wow. Right. And then you also have to keep in mind,
this one would have had water. Sorry,
that's what I was about to say. You got to keep in mind the land has changed. So maybe at one point there was water all around that. And I have seen several pictures of forts like that that are completely in the water. And then like going back to like where I live and like the history of this place, two of the first structures ever built in Connecticut were bastion forts, and they were built by the Dutch. I mean, we can take that, you know, as like maybe true or not, who knows? Maybe the Dutch found those and just said, oh, these are our forts now. And then when the British came, they're like, well, those must be the Dutch forts. They must have built them because they went there, you know, but it could have just as easily been built by the indigenous people like we described, who have so much more interesting stuff about them than we're told or led to believe.
That's the weird thing about all this stuff is because they tell us it's Dutch, it's French, it's English, it's Spanish, and it's all happening at the same time. They're all color coordinated. You know, I have a place in Georgia they're telling me is English. Then I go to Florida to St. Augustine and that's Spanish, but it's literally color coordinated. It's everything about these buildings are the same. Even with the domes on top look like bells. They're shaped like bells. They have bells in so many graveyards. They're using the same things. Is it really just five or six different quote unquote empires emerging at the same time? Why are they emerging at the same time? Why are they colonizing?
They have their own signatures to the way they're doing it, and it's all sounds like you're saying that it's all the same.
Yeah, it's all the same exact thing. They just really they tell this part that, oh, this was this group, and they tell this part, oh, this was this group, and the two never, you know, connect. But when you start looking at the different ones, when they're telling you this is English, this is French, it's like, well, why, if they're warring nations, why are they using the same exact color coordination, same exact architecture styles at the same exact time periods that only took 2 to 3 years. Like that hotel that I had up, they said that took, here, let me pull it up real quick. Flagler College, they said that this took 2 years to build. 2 years. There's no way that this took 2 years to build.
He's amazing, dude.
They couldn't build the roadways in 2 years.
The architecture is amazing. So, okay. So guys, we're coming up on about an hour and 15 minutes. Just to end the podcast, maybe we'll have to do another one just to completely go over Tartaria, because we did pretty good. I think we're bouncing just back and forth through a lot of different stuff, and I think it was.
I like Mark, dude. Yeah. I like you, Mark.
Okay,
I like that, dude.
So
pretty cool, man.
So real quickly, right before we end, because we got till about 10:25. I'll try to do it before, I don't want to over an hour and a half. So what do you guys think like the smoking gun is about Tartaria? Anybody can answer this. Like, what do you feel is like? What do you feel like is like? This is why I believe this 100% is because of this. What would it be? Just so we can end it with that,
Well, the mud floods does it for me, because you can see that the evidence has been covered up, and we start digging these buildings out. We have all the leaning towers all over the world, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. There's so many more than that as well. How did they get that way? But for me, it's really, it's the fires that were in every major American city, with all the World's Fairs happening just after. And again, it only took 2 to 3 years to build all these fantastic structures after major fires. And they say that they were built quickly because it was wood and plaster, but every single one of them kept at least one building that is still in use today as a school, as a college, as a government building, as a museum. There's everything that we're told. When you come across Tartaria, you have to question all of your history past 200 years ago. That's honestly.
Speaking for myself, I'm agnostic, but I think this conversation was enlightening, to say the least. You guys all brought some different aspects to the table that haven't thought about yet, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that. But for me, I would say the architecture and the fact that you have this Gothic ideology within the architecture, and then you have the spires with the metal on them and everything. I don't see anything else that it could be other than some type of pagan architecture that existed in the past, in my personal opinion. And so for me, that's why I think Tartaria is a real thing.
Sweet. And anybody else?
I would say, think about the term Freemason, right? Someone who finds Freemasonry. That could be a potential explanation for that word or meaning. Words have
of meaning.
I like that, bro.
They stole the masonry from the actual Moorish masonry, right? Moorish masonry existed before Freemasonry.
But here's the thing, like, it all goes back to the Temple of Solomon. Yeah. That's what all the Freemasons talk about, at least publicly, because I am not initiated by any means, but I definitely think the secret societies, just the fact that they exist goes to highlight, what everyone said here today is like, definitely question history, definitely re-examine the things in your own neighborhood, like I have with the stone rows that people have as fences in their yards and whatnot. It's like, I don't completely buy that all of them were built by colonists. Some of them go up mountains and over mountains and lead you to places like what I found today, a cairn. I found several stones leaning, just today I went on a hike. I don't think I mentioned that. Thank you. Yeah, it's on my Instagram. But yeah, I think that's kind of like my point, is like, maybe don't take this conversation as like a bunch of answers, more so take it as a bunch of questions to then go and do your own research. Right. And then, draw your own conclusions, because what they're trying to do when you go through the indoctrination school system is give you all the answers. So you don't have any chance to question, and you just go right into worker bee mode and live your life as a drone and never really question anything. right?
Yes.
So that's the reason why we're listening to a show like this, is because we want to fucking question things and really understand the creation, the creator, and etc., everything in between.
All right, and guys, we know that history is really his story, and whoever that his is trying to make you believe this stuff. So as Mark was saying, I really agree with that. When you go deep and you start studying the Illuminati, you start studying the Jesuits, you start studying who created the school system, the Rockefellers, they actually came up with the educational system. You guys are going to know that there's a lot of deception. And as me and Jason and Emmanuel, and hopefully everybody knows, the devil is here to deceive you, right? So that's what's happening to us. So some stuff is going to disappear. Whatever they don't want you to know, they're going to try to deceive you, try to confuse you. Guys, just study everything we said. And like I always say, man, study the word of God, get close to the creator. I believe that Jesus is still coming back. I don't believe that he came back in 17 something. I believe he's still coming back. So guys, get ready for that. Okay. And Jason, did you want to talk or Romie? I'm sorry. I think maybe you froze, or it sounds like Romie.
Oh, it's very stunning. I got a smoking gun on Tartaria, you know, like started looking into this stuff a couple years ago, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you know, obviously I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page that everything that we're being told on the mainstream source is going to be a facade of some sort of, you know, MK that's been, you know, planned and predetermined, you know, for many decades upon us. And it's really even hard to look at old maps and try to determine what they were deciphering then, because of, like, you know, if we can look at history, it's all in symbolic things. That's all done through intuition, and we have to really just listen to the goodness inside. And for me, it's like, yo, Tartaria is a blanket term for just kind of everything being awash, and like it's not even necessarily an empire. It's like the erasing of much more than that. So I don't know. I feel it. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Yeah.
All right. So thank you guys. I appreciate everybody coming on the show. I always end this in prayer. Jason, did you want to say anything before we get off? Because you're
no, man. I agree with. I can agree with a lot of this stuff. I can see that a lot of this stuff is true, because there's missing places. There's missing, the Mayans disappeared, the Incans disappeared, and there's
dude, fucking Jason rules, bro. Josh, how come how come you kept your brother from me? I didn't know your brother was so cool. What's up,
bro? Listen, he's the smoking gun, dude. He's the secret weapon.
The smoking gun for this podcast.
yeah.
He's a secret weapon, dude, hidden in the ankle, you know. But I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jason. No. I just really resonated with you.
I've never believed anybody about history, and so because you start learning it yourself, you're like, man, this doesn't sound like we started off as a very good country. Sounds like I think things are here. I think that I don't know what to think anymore, man. I'm sorry, guys. This is
order. Yes. Order. See, that's what Tartaria does. It like, man, what makes you question everything.
Question it, study it, read it, and take it to God, and go through the funnel it through the Bible, because it's 66 books written through thousands of years.
Order comes from chaos, right?
And I'm
the turmoil creates the order.
There's a creator of the symphony. So go for there's a conductor of the symphony. So go look them out. Seek that, and then start looking. Look for God first, and then go look for all the mythologies and all the other stuff that the conspiracies.
Yes.
So you funnel it. You can put Jesus Christ in it.
Let's get a 1 minute rap battle between Josh and Roman.
We'll do this, man. Sometime, hey, Roman. What we'll do, bro, is
he wants it to go down so bad.
I won't battle you, because I ain't trying to do that. What I'll do is, bro, can you freestyle for real? Let's see if I can do this. I'll really do it right now if you guys want to hear it. And not a battle, though. I'm not going to battle you, because I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, of course,
a little Tartaria freestyle rap then.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me see if I can. Hold on,
guys. Is this podcast live?
Wow.
It's not live,
I got some beats I can throw up if
all right.
Throw up a beat.
Edit in like Aesop Rock, and just tell people I was doing that part.
Oh, there you go. All right, Dan, you've asked for this 3 times now, so this is for you.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Let's see if you can.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Hold on.
Participant screen share.
Hold on, guys. You're gonna hear. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Sorry about the ad. Can you guys hear that? Can everybody hear that?
You got to share your audio.
No.
So go on, hit share screen, and then it'll say advanced at the top. Hit advanced, and then it'll say share audio, and then hit that.
Who can share multiple participants?
Do that.
Do all multiple participants? Can you guys hear it?
No.
No,
Yeah.
I don't hear it.
Unless that was somebody doing it.
Yeah, that was Roman. At the top, it says basic. It's really hard to see, but it says basic, advanced, and something else when you hit share screen.
Okay. And what do I hit?
Hit advanced. Go to the advanced section.
Okay.
And then it says share audio, like right under there. Computer audio or something.
Okay. Can you guys hear it now?
No.
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
Maybe I have to do video. Share. Oh, there we go.
I heard something.
I could play a beat right now.
Like
There you
that?
go. I hear it.
There we go.
There you
There
go.
it is.
Play a beat.
Hold on, guys. All right. We're going to have to back this up real quick. All right. Let's do this. All right.
Awesome.
I got my homie Romie right in front of me. I used to smoke weed back in the day and just token like the blender 3. You better read the summary. They don't want none of me. I guarantee these rappers ain't above me, man. They under me. I got my family thinks that I'm crazy. Every rapper I went against, man, they lackadaisy. They couldn't even phase me if they Ghost Rider was Jay-Z. Step up on this microphone, they think I'm Slim Shady, but I'm not though. I got that Tupac though, that white Pac sitting on the right block. I ain't got a cock, a gun, a weapon, running and stepping with a ton of aggression. Once I do this lyrically, I rip this microphone to bring this music. Now go ahead, homie, Romie, bring it. Show them that you're swinging like a bottle of old English.
Word. Yeah, I don't even know what history gonna tell me, but I think I'm lagging. Damn, listen to the leg up on the delay and what I'm gonna do like every day. But when I look into the history, they be showing me I can't even lie. I don't see the truth. All I see is lies right in front of me. I'm blooming like a flower. Call me homie Romie. What you gonna do? Do you feel it? It's been really fun tonight kicking with the boys. And we looking at some real stories, looking at some chores that we got ahead of us, cause the energy is coming and there's something real funny in the air. Is you feeling it? I ain't even bluffing, motherfucker McMuffin. I'm about to eat this whole beat. I'm gonna eat this older story all to nothing. Firmament all the way to the land of God. Gotta feel it all the way in the sand and your toes. Oh yes, I like to feel the toes with my sand. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, boy.
All right, Danunaki.
That's solid. No, I can't rap for nothing, man.
Danny.
Sloppy.
Danny.
Trying to mess with me. Guarantee I got these. I jump up on the microphone. I came just to see. So easy. Rising from the ashes. I came to bless this. With this microphone, the pain slivers.
Yeah.
That don't want to come in with. About to take a class. I ain't gonna say the word ass because I do. I'm French sign language in Hebrew. I spit on this cloud 9 beneath me. Now you came back to read this.
Hey, your sound's messed up.
Yeah.
Sick.
I thought it was just
sick.
mine.
Sick.
I think we're done.
Good. I'll give that one to Josh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was solid, dude. Good work, man.
I love
That was
that.
excellent.
Yeah.
That was fun. Thank you.
That's the best way I've ever ended a podcast. Holy
Definitely.
shit. I've done 110.
Well, you've never been on Christian and Conspiracies before. This is what Christians do.
CC, what's up? Throw it up in the sky. I love it. You guys rule.
C33, the master builder number for me.
Oh, shit. That's too much wisdom. Hold it, rein it back in.
Hey, Josh, your audio's all messed up. Your mic's cutting out.
Is it? It's cutting out?
That's better.
Okay.
Zoom does it after a while. I hate Zoom.
All right. So, all right, let me go ahead and end this in prayer. Father God, in the name of Jesus, thank you so much for having these wonderful gentlemen on the show. We appreciate you giving us a clear connection. Thank you so much for blessing us with this time, this knowledge, and help us to please expose the evil. And everybody that's on the show, please help them, keep them healthy, keep them safe. And hopefully everybody that's on the show gets led to you, Lord, because we know you're the one, the true creator. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming on.
God.
I haven't freestyled on any show. This is the first time. So
that's awesome. It's dope.
Bless.
Yeah,